Hey, this is Ken Corsini with the Best Deal Ever podcast. And on today's episode, I'm joined by a good buddy of mine, Brad Woodall, who also lives in the Atlanta area. He's going to tell us about a deal where he turned $300 into a $300,000 payday. Stick around to find out how.
Consistency. Just keep taking massive action. Be consistent, and just stay with it. And eventually, if you just keep doing the right things, things will happen. But and to this day, I still get discouraged. Every other month I want to throw in the towel and quit this business, right? Because I get frustrated, right?
Welcome to the BiggerPockets Best Deal Ever show. I'm your lovable host, Ken Corsini, who with my wife, Anita, have flipped over 800 houses in Atlanta since 2005 and even have a show on HGTV. But this show isn't about us. It's about all the amazing real estate investors out there that are crushing it. It's about their stories, their best deals, how they sourced them, how they funded them, and what we can learn from their experiences. This is the Best Deal Ever show. Okay, folks, so let me welcome a good buddy of mine, Brad Woodall, to this Best Deal Ever episode. Brad, how you doing, man?
Good, man.
So quick background. So Brad and I actually have known each other for at least 3 or 4 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, Brad actually moved into one of the very first houses that we did new construction here in Woodstock, Georgia, just north of Atlanta.
That's how I met you. I saw your name on the closing statement, and I stalked you, and I Googled you, and I saw you posted on BiggerPockets, and I was like, oh, cool, let me reach out to this guy, and boom.
Really?
Here we are.
I didn't know you were a stalker. I'm a little nervous now.
Right? Yeah.
But here's the cool thing about what Brad did. So when you moved into the house, you were full-time, 9 to 5er, right? You weren't in the space yet.
Yep,
and
exactly.
It was on BiggerPockets, started dabbling and sending out some direct mail and a little Google AdWords. And next thing you know, you quit your day job and you've been doing this full time for how many years?
About a year and a half now. I've been full time at it.
Okay.
So, yep.
And it's amazing. And this year, how many deals are you going to do?
We'll probably be around 30-ish.
Folks, that's amazing. I mean, quit your day job. A year later, you're doing 30 deals in a year. That is the dream for so many folks. And you're living it. We
did 17 last year is what we closed 17 deals last year. 17
in your first year, and then 30 in your next. That's stinking awesome. How many people want to do that? That's what's amazing. So just to clarify, you're in Atlanta. And are you all over Atlanta, or are you in specific areas in Atlanta?
We buy all over Atlanta, but pretty much I-20 north is where I try to buy stuff from the I-20 line northbound.
Yeah.
I know you guys do a lot of wholesaling down on the south side. Maybe I should do that. I don't know. But, I pretty much try to stick on the north side.
Yeah, we sort of end up all over Atlanta. We probably should be smart and keep it geographically closer to where we are.
Well, sometimes with internet leads, too, because we get a lot of leads from the internet. They even if you try to geographically focus with internet leads, you're still going to get stuff all over the place.
You're going to get what you get. So what's your primary model then? Are you mostly a wholesaler?
I wholesale most deals. My model is essentially, right, I'm a lead generation machine, and as the leads come in, I figure out what the highest and best use, and I cherry pick the ones that I want to fix and flip, or the ones I want to keep as a rental, or I want to do owner financing on, and then I wholesale the rest.
Yeah, which is what a lot of folks say. Same thing we do. I mean, if it's a really good deal, I don't want to give it to somebody else. We're going to do it ourselves. But anything that's marginal, wholesale that thing out, right? Which is a great strategy.
As a marketing machine, there's some months where I, have to wholesale a couple deals that I don't want to wholesale otherwise because I got, Amex bills to pay and that sort of thing.
It can be a cash flow intensive business, so I totally get that too.
Yep.
So let's talk about your best deal. Now, granted, you haven't been in business a ton of time, but I know you've got a whale of a deal that we're going to talk about. Give us the scoop.
So that was a deal that we put under contract in July of 17.
Okay.
So it's coming up on 2 years now that we put it under contract in July. We closed on it in October. We started rehab in November. So that deal came from the very first mailing campaign I ever mailed when I was in the business. I picked a really small list which I wouldn't advise that to people. But I was just dipping my toes in the water with that one. Direct mail is all about volume and consistency. But I sent out that campaign mailer. It was only about 350 houses on this list. I was targeting an area kind of in between where you and I live, called Milton, Georgia, which is equestrian country, big, massive, $1 million estates where all the athletes live, all the very wealthy people live in Milton. It's North Fulton County, which Atlanta's in Fulton County. And I was targeting I call it the little old ranch houses, basically houses that were on, 1 to 5 acres that were less than, I want to say I did like 1,200 square feet, 1,300 square feet. Basically those little old ranch houses that were left. And really the strategy of those is you can buy them to either renovate and sell to a retired couple that wants a small house and they want to live in the country, or subdivide and tear down or whatever, right? You got a few different exit scenarios with those, or you can rent them out.
Man, that is a highly targeted list, and only 350. That's a small mailer.
Very, very small mailer. And I never got a phone call from that campaign until over a year later, because I started doing direct marketing in 2016, and about April of 2016 is when I started, and I didn't get a phone call until July of 17. And this guy called me and said, "Hey, I got this house," and I asked him the address, and he was like, "Oh, it's in Milton," and I was like, "Oh, wow, cool, let me go check it out." I go to the appointment. And that very first mailing campaign I ever did, I did a fancy, like, full color glossy postcard with a picture of a house. I only did that one time because I quickly learned that the mail piece doesn't really matter that much. It's more about consistency and volume that matters in direct mail. And I went to the appointment and he had it sitting on the table there, that postcard. And I was like, oh my God.
A year later,
he held onto it, kept it on his refrigerator or on his coffee table or something. And his life circumstances changed. He had recently been diagnosed with like stage 4 cancer, and he had given a small amount of time to live, and he was basically selling off everything he owned and was going to move in with his sister and just enjoy his last months in life and just travel a little bit and do the thing, hit all his bucket list items and just enjoy life until he passed away. So,
wow.
Yeah. So
unbelievable.
And that's how why direct mail works, right? When their situation changes and when they're ready, they'll call you.
Yeah.
But you have to keep hitting them over. Now, in this case, I didn't hit him over time, but he kept my postcard. So it worked.
You can't assume, a month later after you've done a mail drop that the campaign worked or didn't work for this very reason. But to your point, a lot of times it's because you're following up with them, not necessarily because you're assuming it's sitting on their countertop. In this case, he just sat on this thing for a year. You never even talked to him until a year later.
And some people do, because there was a period where I actually stopped doing direct mail, and this phone call came during that period where I was not sending any direct mail. And I was like, well, I mean, I haven't sent out a mailer in months. So, obviously has a postcard from a while back. So
Yeah. I think the big lesson there is it is all about consistency, and you can't really judge a mail campaign really almost until a year later. I mean, obviously in this case, but realistically, I mean, it takes months and months and months to see how well you performed.
And that's also why it's important to granularize your analysis. Now I have a lot of call rail numbers. I know I can sort of measure things. I'm not granularity down to the mail piece itself from a phone number perspective, but every list has its own phone number. And then I also mail things out. Like I'll use one postcard for like 3 or 4 months, and then I'll switch colors and I'll change that. And generally that 3 or 4 months, you can pretty much gauge the effectiveness of that. Obviously, you're going to get some outliers here and there, but that's just statistics in general. There's always going to be outliers. So.
Sure. All right. So tell us about the house itself. So what'd you end up buying?
So the house was on 2.6 acres in this area. It was on kind of one of the main roads in Milton. Near this area called Birmingham Crossroads. I actually get my mail goes to a UPS store in Birmingham Crossroads. But I was right down the road from that, and it was a 2.6 acre lot. It had like an older raised ranch house on it. It was sort of brick around the base and siding on the top. It was I think it was built in 1978 is when it was built. The guy that owned it bought it in 1984. So he had actually owned it longer than I've been alive. I was born in 85. So he'd lived in it for a long time and owned it for a long time. He really never did anything to it. I mean, it had shag carpet in it.
Nice.
Paneling. I mean, it was like a time capsule inside. Shag carpet in the basement was kind of stinky because of the moisture in the basement and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was sort of a time capsule. I mean, it wasn't in terrible shape, but it had deferred maintenance. I mean, the siding needed a little TLC. It was that old press board stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just wasn't updated at all, and it was compartmentalized like those old houses. And it was about 1,800 square feet upstairs, and then it was. The basement was finished. There was also kind of like an in-law suite in the basement, and then it had a drive-under garage. So a portion of the basement was the garage, and you drove around the backside into the garage. So the garage wasn't visible from the road. So that was probably 400 square feet for a garage. So then, what's that? 1,400 is the remaining area in the basement that was all finished out.
That's actually, I mean, considering you were targeting smaller houses, it's a pretty good sized house. In terms of top and then basement. So when you showed up there, you saw this old man that wanted out of the house. You saw the postcard there. How did the negotiation go down?
So he was there with his sister. His sister was sort of helping him out. They were just good old Georgia people. You're from Georgia, just good old people. Just talk to them and build a lot of rapport with them and just talk about life in general, right? When you go on an appointment, it's never about the house. It's about them and their story and their situation. And so we just talked for a while. I was there. It was July, so I was getting eaten alive by mosquitoes out there. And, we're standing outside, and it was hot in the house because the air conditioner wasn't working, or maybe he had it turned off. I don't know. But so we sat outside underneath the porch in the back, and we just talked for a while. He said they were talking to a few other investors. I just built a lot of rapport, and I made him an offer there, and he wanted to think on it. Normally, if you've kind of followed John Martinez tactics, there's no maybes or think it overs. It's just yes or no. But that was before I ever got into his stuff. And I let him think on it. And then I followed up with him. I stayed in contact with him. And then a few days later, they decided I offered him 190 on this property, which
that's aggressive.
To preface this area, land sells for $100,000 an acre, and this was 2.6 acres. So just right. The dirt itself was worth $260,000 retail.
Yep.
Okay. So I offered him 190, and then they came back and they said, "Could you do 200?" And I said, "Let me think about it." And I called him. I stewed on it for about an hour or two, and then I called him back later and said, "Yeah, I can do that." So then I went back. We signed the contract. I met them back over at the house. He wasn't living in the house at that point. He was living with his sister, but she lived nearby in Canton, just down the road. So they weren't very far away. We went back. We signed the contract there and got under contract. And at that point, I was like, okay, great. Well, I've got a few different exit scenarios, right? I can sell this to a builder. I can flip the house, make good money on the house. You can flip the house and subdivide the lot, or I could just wholesale it, right? Just buy it, turn around and put it on the market for $260,000, right? I had it for 200, turn around and list it for 260, and Absolutely. I'd probably sell it in 2 days.
Yep, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had a few different exit scenarios, and I try to do that with all my deals, right? I try to make sure I have a few different exit scenarios with every deal. That way, I'm not stuck in one thing, and then if that thing falls apart, I don't have a plan B or a plan C.
Yeah.
So.
But I hear 2.6 acres. First thing that comes to my mind is, man, there is value in that land, and there's value in the house. Let's try to squeeze a little bit out of both.
Right. Exactly. And there's so many, from the wholesale aspect of that, there are so many very wealthy people in that area that are looking for property in that area that would scoop that up super, super fast.
Yeah. So
that have cash.
So you bought it, and then what'd you decide?
I called a friend of mine who I knew this sort of fit their model, and I knew there was a potential where you could kind of subdivide the property and build a house on one portion of the property and then renovate the existing house. Given the area, if you're going to do a renovation, buyers in that area are, more affluent people, so they're going to expect a higher level renovation.
Sure.
You're going to have to do a really, really nice renovation. So at the time, I only had a few fix and flips under my belt. So I called a friend of mine and I said, hey, I think this deal would probably work for what, your niche is, right? Because they were doing new construction and then they were doing sort of high-end, some high-end stuff in the area, high-end remodels in the area. And they came, looked at it, and, we decided to partner up on it.
Nice.
And we ended up basically structuring the partnership where we would basically just they would take the deal down in their company name, but we had a JV agreement, and I get a profit share of whatever profits this deal generates. And I also put in my paperwork that not only do I get profit if we sell the flip, but if it's subdivided, any other subsequent deals that occur from this parcel of land, I get a profit share of that too.
Nice.
So
you being new in the business at the time, they didn't necessarily have the wherewithal to do all this yourself and build a house yourself, but you found somebody that did have the ability to do that and just structured a JV. Now with all the risks on them, it's their money, it's their time and effort, and you participate in the spoils whenever it sells and profits.
And I even offered to put some skin in the game, right? I at the time, I offered to put a little bit of money into it, but he had a lot of just private money, and basically they were going to 100% finance the whole deal anyways with private money, so it was fine.
Nice. So big renovation. What the reno look like?
Reno ended up being about it was a full renovation, interior, exterior, everything. It ended up running about $110,000 on the renovation. On the inside, in the main living area, sort of one side of the house was all the bedrooms. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath upstairs. So 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms were down on one end. And then the other end was, the den and the formal living room and the kitchen and all that. We completely opened up the entire living area, vaulted the ceiling. So the whole living area, the whole one half of the house was just one big wide open room with a couple columns in it, put in a beam and stuff, completely opened that space up. And then redid the basement, this was out in the country, so made it very farmhouse-ish, right, with some shiplap here and there, and just nice sort of country finishes, right? And then exterior-wise, put new siding on it, did board and batten siding on the exterior, painted sort of parge-coated the brick down below to make it sort of that weathered white look. And then put a porch on it because it was just this long raised ranch house, and it was a side gable. So if you look at the front of the house, all you see is just siding and then the front half of the roof. It wasn't very visually appealing, and the front door was kind of like sunk in, so didn't have a whole lot going on. So we put a big cedar front porch on the front of it just to create some depth to the property. And re-landscape the yard, and then we ended up subdividing the property. So we got a survey done and subdivided the property. In that area, you have to have a minimum of an acre of land per lot. So we were going to cut it in half, but to get adequate soils to accommodate a septic system in the back, we had to chop up the lot a certain way so that to build a new house on the back lot, we needed a section for the septic drain field.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So how big was the lot?
What's that?
How big was the lot versus the house?
So the house ended up being on about an acre lot.
Okay, which is still, a house on an acre in a good area, it's pretty darn good. And then
and luckily the house sat all the way over to the right side of this property.
Okay.
The existing house.
Nice.
It was all the way over on the right. So the new lot is like a flag lot that kind of carves out, goes behind it and beside it.
Okay, gotcha.
Wraps around it.
Golly, talk about ideal.
Right. Now, we had to actually go through a few different levels of soil tests because the first soil test, which would be a level 3, didn't indicate that the soils would be adequate. So we had to go up and spend a little bit more money and do a level 5. Because with the level 3, we were looking at having to do an alternative septic system, which is like a mounded system. That's like $15,000.
Yep.
So we went and spent a few $1,000s more and did a level 5, and then we found some good soils and found a section where you could put in a septic system.
Nice.
So Because everything in that area is on septic. There's no sewer out in that area. It's all septic.
Yeah.
A lot of people are afraid of septic, but where you and I live, out on
Big deal.
acreage, everything's on septic.
Yeah.
It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, when you're in Georgia, nobody cares if you're septic or versus sewer.
Right, exactly. We have pretty decent soils around here.
Sure. Yeah. So that's amazing. So you've got this house, full reno, $110,000 renovation, subdivided it out to 1 acre. Now you've got a lot, sort of on the kind of a free lot, really, 1.6 acres now on the back. So What did you sell first, the lot or the house?
The house sold first.
Okay.
Put it up for sale, and it literally went under contract. I think it was within a week or two.
For how much?
$440,000.
Come on.
And that we were only originally thinking that we were originally estimating the ARV on the house to be around 350.
Yeah. Holy
But
cow.
Where it is, we took a stretch because it's surrounded by, there's a subdivision a quarter mile away, a newer subdivision where they're building these new modern kind of farmhouse style houses. And those are selling in the $700,000 and $800,000 range. Now, granted, they're a lot bigger and they're newer houses, but you can sort of almost command a certain price in that area because of the area. Now, that's a crapshoot, right? There's a risk there. But we decided to try to list it out at a higher price, and we got it, and it ended up appraising, and everything was good.
That's amazing. Okay, so 440 sale price. You've had 110 in reno. You bought it for 200, so you've basically made a gross of 130.
Yep.
But you've got a free 1.6 acre lot behind you,
where the dirt is worth $160,000 by itself.
Yep. Oh my gosh! So what's the story on the dirt then?
So the plan has always been to do a build on it, but for a while we put it out for sale. And because in this area in Milton, there's a group called Preserve Rural Milton, and they want to keep it very rural. So the process to obtain building permits to build anything is a long and arduous process, and it takes a billion hoops to jump through to get permits to build a property. That's part of the reason why property values are so high in the area, is because it's so difficult to build, and there's so many restrictions on building and what you can build and how big the lot area needs to be and the frontage and it's complicated. So we put it up for sale for a little bit, had a few offers on it, and then ultimately decided that it's probably just better to build on it. And as we speak right now, the lot is being cleared for the construction. So
nice.
Yeah.
So it's a free lot. You build a house. The profit's going to be insane. What are you guys anticipating?
Let's say you didn't have a free lot on a build like that in that area. You're going to sell a house like in that area for somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 for a new construction house that ranges in the 3,000 to 4,000 square foot range, right?
Yep.
And then cost for construction in this area could be anywhere from $100 to $120 a foot. Just depends on your level of finishes.
Right.
So you're probably going to look at a net profit on a build with not getting a free lot of anywhere from like 60 to 100,000. It just depends on factors. Right?
Yeah. Right. And then you throw in $160,000.
Right. So you're looking at a $200,000 potential net profit.
Goodness gracious. And what's great, this is a deal that you sourced before you were full-time. One of the very first mail campaigns you ever did. And now you're looking at a payday of in the 300,000s when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I've already gotten one payday on it, right, when we sold the flip, and then I'm going to get another payday whenever this one build finishes, right? So that's just like extra money that could come
icing.
One day.
It's icing.
Right, icing on the cake.
And none of it with your own money.
Right.
Because you JV'd on it, and you put it all on
I have like $300 in it, right, for my mailing campaign.
That's it.
And I spent... I paid for a septic inspection. That was like $300. So I think I'm all in it for like $600.
That's almost like that's a good blog title, from 300 to 300,000. Right. $300 leveraged into 300,000.
Exactly.
Okay. So, big lesson learned from this experience.
Do direct mail, right?
Direct mail works. Patience.
Direct mail works.
Yeah.
Be patient. Definitely be patient, right? We're almost 2 years into this deal now, right? Yeah. We sold the We completed and we sold the flip in May of last year of 2018.
Okay.
The reno took started in November and was done in about April-ish. I think it was right around the beginning of April, end of March, and then listed it, and then it was I think it was like a 40 or I think we did do like a 45-day close because we were waiting for the new plats to be recorded, and we had to wait for the new plats to get recorded, so that delayed closing a little bit.
I got you. So again, I think the big takeaway here is direct mail. It does work, but there is just a huge amount of patience. Don't judge how successful your campaign was until at least a year down the road.
Right.
And when you find a deal, like this where there's some acreage involved, there's more ways to skin this. It's like you said, you had a bunch of different options, and in the end, you saw that there was potential to subdivide it and build rather than just sell the whole thing. And the fact that you JV'd with somebody, that's huge.
Right.
It was none of your own money.
Well, JV'd with someone I knew had the expertise and the resources to take on a project of this size.
That's right. Yeah.
And I still, to this day, I still JV with people on some deals. Sometimes if I get a deal in an area where I think it'd be an easy fix and flip and I don't want to drive there and manage that project, I'll partner with someone who lives over on that side of town, let them manage the rehab, and I'll take 50% of the profit or whatever.
Absolutely.
I do that to this day on deals,
Yeah.
And really, I did one last summer where I drove over there and I put a lockbox on the house when we bought it. And I drove over there. Ironically, I have my agent's license too with y'all's brokerage. I just hang my license, although I'm not really a practicing agent. I just list my own flips. I don't really generate much revenue for you guys.
That's all right.
But
we like you anyways.
I had somebody else I had my acquisitions manager go put my sign and my super box on that house when I listed it. So I didn't even go back to that house until it was already done and we had sold it. And I went over there to pick up my super box and get my sign out of the yard.
That's a beautiful thing.
Right. I never stepped foot in that house during the whole rehab.
So what advice would you give to somebody that's maybe just starting out, kind of the same position you were in when you sent this mail campaign?
Consistency. Just keep taking massive action, be consistent, and just stay with it. And eventually, if you just keep doing the right things will happen. But and to this day, I still get discouraged. Every other month I want to throw in the towel and quit this business, right? Because I get frustrated, right? But then the next day something happens. The good's right around the corner all the time, right? And you learn to build a lot of fortitude in this business, and you learn to just go with the flow and just keep trudging ahead, right? Don't look back.
That's right. Yeah.
Just look forward.
Yep. Patience. That's good. Brad, man, talking about an amazing story. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks. Sounds good.
Take care.
All right. Appreciate it. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Best Deal Ever show, brought to you by BiggerPockets. If you've been energized, entertained, or enlightened by today's show, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Ken Corsini, or check us out online at redbarnhomes.com. And don't forget, one man's best deal ever may be the inspiration you need to create your next best deal. So, hope to see you on the next episode.